gel pens, slinkies, was silly putty. Actually, I have a story with that. I got it caught in my hair and I couldn't like my dad had to like cut a piece of my hair because I don't know if I like fell asleep with it or something. I was probably playing with it. I think I fell asleep and then yeah, it was in my hair. So that was a disaster.
Welcome to another episode of Tobin Tonight. We're here joined by Jenna Nation. Jenna, my first question to you is actually Nation your last name? It can't be. It can't be.
Well, now it is. No, it is not. It is not my real last name.
Okay, so I'm just curious, like, where did you come up with the idea then of like Jenna Nation? Like, it's interesting to me because when we were doing research earlier, like, you know, when you go in and find acts that you kind of grew up on or enjoy, like,
yeah,
I grew up on, say, Rihanna, and it was only recently I realized that, hold on a second, that's actually not her name. So like it sticks, which I get it. It's good marketing, but like, why Nation? Is it more or less like, because I'm going to take over the whole world?
Well, I like that idea, but actually, so I was a jazz singer first for the longest time. Yeah, so I did. I was under my real name for a while, and then I just went by Jenna, and I started to focus on writing my own music and was doing more of like the R&B pop thing. And of course there's like a million Jennas in the world. So it was hard to, kind of like distinguish myself from everybody else online, and especially when you're up and coming and everything. So then I started a hashtag, which started out as Jenna Fam, like hashtag Jenna Fam, just to kind of bring all my fans together. But that family sort of grew, and so it became the Jenna Nation. And so, on everything that I was doing, I was putting hashtag Jenna Nation and all this, and people who didn't actually know me personally, I guess, just assumed that that was my name. So when they sent me a message, they'd say, "Oh, Miss Nation" or whatever, and I was like, "Oh, I kind of like that." So I was like, I needed something else with Jenna to go with it, so I just adopted the name. And
I like that people actually addressing you by like
I like it.
Like Miss Nation. Like, I get like Mr. Tobin, and I'm just like, hey, I'm 29. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. But yeah, it's like, when you hear Pitbull, it's like Mr. Worldwide. It's like I guess, and it's not to like tease you in a way, but it's like, with Pitbull, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, easy Pitbull. Like Mr. Worldwide. But then I guess after a while, when you get so used to it, it's like if someone came up to me now and was like, Mr. Worldwide, they're like, oh yeah, Pitbull. But it just starts to stick with you. It's like if someone's like, I'm the greatest skateboarder ever. You're like, okay. And then like 4 years later, you're like, all right, whatever. Let him just be the greatest skateboarder ever. Sure. But yeah, I think that's interesting. It's like, Mrs. Nation, but it's tough to find, I guess, when you have a very kind of common name, right? And then there's so many, like you said, Jenna's out there to kind of get something to stick. I was thinking actually the first thing that you might have ran into is not so much that people in music, but it's like, I guess it's like Jenna Marbles comes to mind when I think Jenna, right? And I think if someone came across that and they're like, hey, that doesn't look like the Jenna that is on Jenna Marbles, but okay. It's like, hey, are you that Jenna? You're like, oh my God, stop
it actually happened to me, especially before I had the Jenna Nation attached to my name. Like, people be like, but you don't look like her. So it happened for sure.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into, I guess, the music scene, because, sometimes it's due to location. Like again, full disclosure, like I went to Ottawa. It's kind of like I'm from Newfoundland, but went to school at Carleton. So I know a few actually people that, have a mutual friend here. But to me, when I think Ottawa, it's like, I always think like Blues Fest, jazz. I don't really see a lot of, and I could be wrong, I'm hanging out with the wrong people. I don't really see a lot of like just say R&B, hip hop. And I just want to know like where did those influences come from?
So I am from Ottawa originally. I do live in Toronto now. And I mean, I guess I was lucky in the sense that my family just always loved music and listened to a lot of different kinds of music. So I was always exposed to, everything from like classical to Latin to rock to, R&B, soul, whatever. And especially my parents, like they really loved a lot of like the old school, like soul and R&B, Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, like, and funk and that kind of thing. So I grew up listening to that, and jazz as well. And obviously jazz and R&B are very connected. And yeah, so it just kind of always was something that I listened to. Even in high school, a lot of my friends, you know, listened to a lot of R&B music, R&B pop music, really, and hip hop and everything. So, and then I went to Berkeley in Boston, Berkeley College of Music, and that just like even more opened my eyes up to, you know, R&B and soul music and everything like that. And I had the chance to really explore it and even start to write it. And just the people that I was hanging out with at school, like that was their thing. And so I really, you know, got to play with that more. And when I was there, I really realized like this is what I truly love. And so it was the kind of all those influences together. And then when I started to writing, that's just when I started to write, sorry, that's just what started to come out. So there was, at the beginning, there was still a lot of jazz influences in what I did. And then slowly it's kind of shifted from like jazz, R&B, pop to like more R&B pop and now more R&B. Yeah, so it's just kind of always something that's been there. And then now, like, I still listen a lot to 90s R&B in particular, a lot of old school soul and R&B, and some of the newer artists too.
I feel like we get along great. I feel like, you know, just because you just said 90s R&B and just 90s to me, it's like, so I have like a niece, and when she comes over on weekends, you know, like, yeah, there are people that probably want to influence it, like, you know, let her listen to today's music. And I'm just like, sure, yeah, we can do that. Like, that's fine. Like, I'm sure she likes, you know, Halsey and Pink. But I will go to like the iHeart 2000s and I'll be like, let's play some iHeart 2000s. And then like, it was funny because last night she said, I don't want to listen to iHeart 90s. I don't know any of those music. And I felt like just looking at her right in the face and be like, yet you know iHeart 2000s? Like, you realize you weren't born, but you're listening to this. And she can sing you like E.T., Katy Perry. And I'm like, you weren't born, but you know this song. Okay, that's cool. So yeah, it's like anytime someone's going to say like, oh yeah, let's listen to 90s music. I'm like, don't know a lot about you, but let's do this. And I even seen that you had, did a cover of like Say My Name on your like Instagram. And instantly I was like, yeah, that's so cool. I'm like, I wish I could, but number one, I'm a dude. So people would be like, easy. And I'd be like, okay, we're past that. It's 2020 or like 2021 actually. And number two, they'd be like, why are you using Say My Name? I'd be like, excuse me, it's a great song.
Yeah, exactly.
But tell me a little bit more, because you mentioned about going to like Berkeley College. Like, to me, anytime you get, just say, whether it be from Ontario, BC, wherever you're from, to go down to a place in the States to go to college, like you see people that go on like, say, hockey scholarships, sports scholarships, to the States. But tell me a little bit about what brought you here to Berkeley, because in my mind, I'm from Newfoundland, but I knew that I was going to go either to like Memorial University, like Dalhousie, or Carleton. It never arranged my mind that, hey, let's go to a university not even in Canada or a college that's not even here.
I think, well, I knew that music was what I wanted to continue to study. And like, I just couldn't see myself doing anything else. So when I started to research different schools, I mean, Carleton obviously came up, and Humber College of Music in the Toronto area and things like that. And those are really great schools. But when I heard about Berklee College of Music, what I guess attracted me to their program is that like they're the best contemporary music school in the world, and some of the other programs like didn't have that. Like there was a jazz focus or a classical focus. McGill too has a strong like jazz and classical focus, and which is great, but I wanted like more than just like jazz and classical. And so when I read about Berklee, where you could do like Latin ensembles and rock and whatever like your heart desired, I was like, and even like specific artists too, you know. It just like, I was like, okay, this is like what I need and what I want. So then that just like instantly became my dream school. So yeah, I worked really hard to get in, and it was a really great experience.
So what like kind of qualifications do you need? Like, because this is just
Mhm.
fascinating to me. It's like, what kind of qualifications do you need to kind of get into Berkeley? Because I know usually if you're
Mhm.
going in for, say, a communications degree or math or science, something of that nature, it's
Yeah.
mostly like, hey, have the grades and then just work
Mhm.
your ass off when you get in there. But in this case, like, even when you go to, I guess, like talent agencies, if you're trying to go
Yeah.
acting, they want like some of your work that you've done or like
Yeah.
a picture portfolio. So what kind of stuff do they look for at Berkeley?
So I mean, grades definitely like were a part of it, but it wasn't like everything, but it would definitely help, like, if you had
Yeah.
really good grades and all of that, and, I mean, like any other school, you have to do, like, your essay and all the other normal application things, but what was different about Berkeley is you had to do an audition either in person or online. I did
Okay.
mine in person, and, yeah, so they basically just test kind of, like, your musical knowledge and, like, where you're at, so things like, I mean, they ask you to sing like a song or two or play if you're doing an instrument audition. And then, they test like your ear training. So they'll ask you to sing like certain scales, or they'll play something for you and you have to sing it or play it back, or they'll play different chords. And without looking at the keyboard, you have to let them know like what chord they're
Oh,
playing,
wow.
or they'll put a sheet of music in front of you and you have to sight read it. So they're testing all of that. And obviously, if you're like well balanced and all of that, then you have more, you're more likely to get in. Obviously, you
Yeah.
don't have to like, have everything perfect because that's why you're going to learn
Yeah,
too. But it
exactly.
really helps if like you already have some of that under your belt. So yeah, before Berkeley, I spent years preparing, with music theory and ear training and practicing all of that just to up my chances for sure.
That's interesting because I feel like now if I was going into Berkeley, they'd just be like, "How did you even get here?" I'd be like, "That's definitely that's F sharp." They'd be like, "We didn't even play any instrument yet." I'd be like, "I'm under pressure. I feel so much pressure." um, but
That's
no,
so
that's interesting. Because
yeah.
yeah, I'm always interested to see because when you go into different fields, like I know when you grow up, you're supposed to like you're open your mind to more things, but
Mhm.
it's like going at Carleton or anywhere you go, like you're kind of focused on your major, your minor. And if someone says, "Well, I'm an engineer," you're like, "Great, good for you." It's like
Yeah.
I don't know what you do. Just leave me be. Like, or you're at a party and someone's like, "Well, I'm a drama major." It's like, you sure are. But
Mhm.
it's kind of like you don't have an appreciation for it until like maybe over time when maybe you either get an interest in it or
Yeah.
you're kind of like, okay, well, we all started somewhere. Like Tom Hanks is not just Tom Hanks. He didn't just come
Mhm.
out of the womb like, put me in all the movies.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just interesting to me to get that kind of dynamic and to see that
Yeah.
process. But now when you were at that time or at Berkeley, like
Mhm.
I guess your classmates and the people you're surrounded by, like, did it kind of push you or did you feel like, okay, this is my environment? Because I know,
Mhm.
sometimes when you're at a certain institution, school, whatever, it's like sometimes you feel like, oh man, I'm not being pushed. Or there's other times
Mhm.
where you're like, whoa, all these people are like so much more talented. Where do I fit in? Have you ever
Yeah.
had this kind of mindset?
Yeah. So I mean, getting there, it was definitely overwhelming, but not in, like, a bad way. It just was,
Yeah.
like, I'd never experienced, like, anything like this, to be surrounded by, like, so many musicians, so much talent, and, like, people who have the same passion as me. So it was, like, super, super exciting. And to be honest, like, my first year, probably, like, my grades weren't as great as they could be just because, like, I just wanted to jam all night with people and not focus on my homework. I was so interested in just playing with people and creating and,
Yeah.
like yeah, so it was just, but yeah, so for the most part, like, yeah, I would say, like, I learned probably as much in the class like, outside of the classroom, sorry, as I did, maybe even
Yeah.
more, than in the classroom, and, what was cool too is, like, my professors were all, like, either musicians or been in the music industry or whatever, so they understood, and they genuinely wanted to help you and give you advice and, push you to be even better, so that was really cool. And yeah, just like some people who were there were just like out of this world talented. Like it was insane. So it was really great to be surrounded by those people because they just like really helped me to get even better. And there were times where sometimes I felt like, oh my God, like these people are so good. Like, what am I doing? But for the most part, it was a very, very positive experience.
I feel like in my mind, it's like when you're saying like learning more about like learning outside the classroom just as much as you did in, but like your first year talk about all you wanted to do was jam. I just think of like the School of Rock where it's like it's like Jenna shows up and it's people like, oh, we're expected to study, we're expected to do well, and then like you just see one guy like, I'm starting a band, do you want to be in it? It's like, yeah. It's like totally.
No, really, that would happen. Like you hang out like in the school, like lobby, dorms, whatever, and like people are creating like bands in their dorm rooms, or like people are in the lobby and they just start like jamming. They have their drumsticks and they're banging on like a air pole or like whatever.
And unlike a conventional university where like you have all like it's like a high school, like a big high school where everyone has their thing. Someone doesn't come over and like push them down or be like, can you stop? I'm trying to study. They're like, all right, choreography, let's do this. Like let's all get involved.
I remember sometimes like in the cafeteria, there'd be full on like jam sessions with the entire cafeteria. People will use like their cups, their cutlery, start singing. If someone had like their instrument with them, like it was crazy. And it'd be like, 150 kids like jamming all together. It was really, really cool.
It feels like in my mind like a High School Musical breakout. That's what it feels.
Yeah. Kind of what.
It's funny because when you mentioned earlier, like of course the first time when you mentioned Berkeley, and then I did a little bit of research and found that out. I don't know why. It's just I don't see, like I don't go to a lot of movies. I'm a pretty big TV show buff, but the first thing that came to mind when I heard Berkeley was the line, I think it's in Superbad, where at the end is it Superbad? Or
I think
it's like where he's like, I was supposed to go to Berkeley.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I was like, man, why is that the first thing that comes to mind?
That's okay.
So explain a little bit.
Most people think of the California one first.
Oh, really? Okay. No. You know what? I didn't. I when I just seen Berkeley, I was just like, yeah, that makes sense. It's music up the alley. So who are some of the people that you looked up to? Like, I know we kind of got into it with the influence, but like name some artists that I guess kind of inspired you along the way. Like I'm assuming, so if I was to throw stuff at you, you could tell me if you're right or wrong here, but like I would think maybe like modern day, say like The Weeknd for a Canadian reference, maybe like Destiny's Child, maybe a little bit of Rihanna, but like tell me who you would put in your kind of, this is what made me get into this.
Yeah. So like I said, so my parents listening to like Stevie Wonder is like a favorite of my parents, and then now has become a favorite of mine. Definitely a huge influence to me, like Michael Jackson, a lot of like 70s soul bands and artists as well. My grandparents really got me listening to jazz music, and so like people like Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan, and even some instrumentalists as well, have been influence to me, Charlie Parker and Miles Davis. And then so like 90s R&B has probably been maybe my biggest influence, like Randy, Mariah Carey, Whitney,
Boyz II Men.
Boyz II Men. Like, I miss some of those groups, like it's just so good. I want to bring that back.
It's just iHeart 90s, man. Just find those stations.
I will.
After this interview is over, I'm just gonna get a text message or like, man, it's like I'm gone down this whole whirlwind now. It's like I think of actually when you were mentioning some of these names, like one that kind of mind that it's funny because I'm sure if you brought it up to some kid today, they would be like, oh yeah, that's the guy who got Justin Bieber famous. It's like, no, it was Usher. Usher was Usher.
Or even now, like a lot of songs like by current artists have samples from 90s or 80s, but like people don't know that. Like current kids, I guess, who grew up like after.
I will tell you honestly, I fall into that category because when I was at a soccer game one time with my friend Colin, and if he listens to this, he'll understand. Like I grew up listening to Kanye, Jay-Z, and there were times that there's samples, and I would just be like, "This is killer! I can't believe he put in this beat," and they'd be like, "You know where that came from, right?" I'd be like, "Yeah, totally," and then I'd go to Colin and be like, "Where did this come from?" And he'd be like, he would then like blurt out like, "You don't know." I'm like, "I came to you in confidence so that you wouldn't blurt this out. But yeah, when I go back and like I'll listen to like say I can't remember certain tracks now, but like certain ones that Kanye used, and it's samples from like MJ or and I'm like, wow, didn't even know it. And then I feel like I should be like put in like the stupid pile.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I personally, especially when that happens and it's around me, I like to like educate people a little bit about that. Be like, no, that came from, you know.
Like for example, like there's like Ava Max, and like there's a few songs that she has that it's like I'm Not Your Barbie Girl or something, and then like they're like, I love this beat, I love this song. I'm like, but you know where that kind of, and they're like, no. Then you'll play the, and they're like, well, I like Ava Max's version. I'm like, that's I like inside you're like burning up. You're like, that's totally fine. That's fine. But yeah, I think it was like Pretty Young Thing he used in one of the songs, and I didn't even know. And then when I heard the other one, I was like, just mind blown. So the other thing I want to get into too in this interview is like now, again, we've learned pretty much going from Berkeley, of course, I guess the hard work that goes with it, the fun attitude that you have, but like you've actually been on like, so Blues Fest, you've opened for acts like Love or Lauv and like Shawn Mendes. Explain to me what that's like. Do you ever get to chat to them? Or are you just excited that you're kind of in this moment? Because now you're getting their fan base as well, right? That's seeing you.
So I actually didn't really get to like chat to them because there's just so much going on in those days, and it's not like Shawn Mendes called me up and was like, hey, can you open this? I thought that would have been nice. So many in between people, right, to do all that stuff. So it was really just like a quick like, hi, how you doing? Great job out there, you know. Like, so but no, like it was, well, for me, like, so RBC Blues Fest is a big festival in Ottawa. And I, you know, grew up like attending that festival pretty much every summer. That was kind of, because to be honest, like not a lot of like big acts come through Ottawa. They come through Toronto and Montreal, and you know how that feels in Newfoundland.
I'm in the East Coast, man. Like when Reba, Tim McGraw, and The Weeknd come to us, it's like their final tour. They're going to tour Canada. I'm like, yeah, that's great, cool.
So that's kind of one of the festivals, I guess, that you can actually really get to see some of like the bigger artists. And so going to the festival as a kid and teenager and everything, you know, I was always said to myself, oh my God, like one day I want to be up on that stage. Like I'm going to be up on that stage. And I kept saying it every year. And then I got a call like, hey, would you open for, you know, Shawn Mendes? And like, that was just a dream come true to like be on that stage. And like you said, it was cool because like there was so many people in the audience who'd never heard of me before, but they were there for Shawn Mendes. And then like now they became my fans because like I was performing. And so it's just really, really cool. So yeah.
It's like the circle of performing, like in my mind, and I'll use these examples, like, you know, a Halsey or a Kelsey Ballerini, or even like, like even at one point, even though it's weird to think about it, but like a Destiny's Child or whatever, like they had to open for somebody, or like at one point they were at like a small little festival, and you're like, oh yeah, it's like I've seen them perform. It's like, and you're like, who? And then it's like you've never heard of them, and then like years later, it's like, well, I've actually seen them perform when they were nobody, and they're just as good as they were back then. You're like, oh, tell me more. Like, that's crazy.
That happened actually with The Weeknd. Like, I saw The Weeknd at the Blues Fest. He wasn't even playing the main stage. Like, he was just like this up and coming, you know, like R&B singer from Toronto who like was getting some traction, but like nobody, like he was doing well, I guess, in Toronto. People knew him, but like he wasn't really all that well known. And so I was like, let me go check him out. And I was like, whoa, he's cool. Like he sounds a lot like MJ, and then here he is, like just exploding, you know. So it's cool, like when you kind of can actually be there for those moments when an artist is like just starting out, and to kind of see that growth.
Yeah, here he is now performing at Super Bowls, and pretty much like, you know, putting the Grammys in their place by saying, I'm not doing that. And you're like, hold on a second, you started here, And now I go up here, like I'm not debating it or like being like, how dare him, but it's like, it's cool that you actually go from basically, it's like Ed Sheeran for me. Like Ed Sheeran was one time just singing out in front of a store, and you're like, oh, look at that kid over there singing. Next minute it's like, yeah, look at this kid now. It's like, oh, sorry, Ed, didn't mean to disrespect you. But in saying all that, like, you know, going as far as this, like going on your blues fest, opening up for these acts, it's kind of interesting. I liked your Shawn Mendes story. It's like, it's not like he's gonna text me. Like, that would be great though if he did. Like, hey, I heard you're opening for me. It's like, it's so cool. Like, you're just like, I'm not doing it anymore. You just see like a faint in the background. But like, tell me a little bit about like when you hear your song, like the first time you ever heard your song on a radio, because I've heard by doing a little bit of research as well, like UK radios played it. You have indie radio, like independent radios that played it all over Canada. I think you had, even on your profile there, it was like 2017. I think it was like R&B, was it like album or so? Or so it's funny to me because again, independent artist doing all this work. But like when you first hear like, oh, people are listening to my stuff in the UK, like does it go through your mind like, oh, I'm getting big. I'm getting pretty big.
Well, yeah, I always see there's like still so far to go, but it definitely is a really good feeling when, you know, anybody just wants to play my music. And you know, obviously like it's a little more, I guess it's like makes sense if it's like, you know, an Ottawa station or a Toronto station picks it up, which is great. But yeah, it's kind of cool when like somebody in Germany or the UK is like, well, how the heck did you hear about me? And play my song on your radio, like station like that. That is a really cool feeling because I'm like, I'm international now. Like, but like
you're Mrs. International.
Yes.
I just brought it up because like I did find it funny because like sometimes, of course, when you're signed with like just say a label or like you get famous in your own, like I'll use the Shawn Mendes example. Like for me, I think Shawn Mendes and his buddies, which is so funny and so kind of karma in a way. It's like Vine to me like is now like what TikTok is, but I think I've seen Shawn Mendes perform like just covers on Vine, and I was like, oh, this kid has talent. I don't like his three other friends. They're just goofing off, like Cameron, Nash, whatever, like whatever. Screw you guys. But like, I was like, this guy's going places. Didn't even know he was Canadian. Sees like seen his first kind of album come out, and he's like, oh, okay, he's getting there. Now look at him. But I look at that and I'm like, yeah, of course he's going to be played in Canada. Oh, now he's getting expanded in the US. Now he's doing tours. But it's interesting to me when you get like, just say someone send you a message like, I heard your song in the UK, and you're like, how the did you hear my song in the UK? Or like when I'm doing podcasts and I'll look at like the ratings and it's like #1 in India, or like, you know, a lot of more people. And I'm like, how are you listening to me in India? I'm from Newfoundland. Like, is it the accent that you like? Is it like the guest? What's going on?
No, it's really cool. And it's funny you say that because like with things like Spotify and some other platforms and whatnot, like they actually have that for artists where you can see your analytics. And so it's kind of cool when you can actually go in and see that. And then, you know, like, you have like, you know, Canada and US are like at the top, and then randomly it's like Indonesia #3 or like Brazil, and you're like, but how? It's cool though.
Because it was to me, I think on mine it was like, so it goes like, I think it was like India, Canada, US, but I think before I could see the analytics, someone had told me, and it's weird because I think someone kept on messaging me, and you know, sometimes it just goes into this like message request, and I was like, oh, it's just one of these like spam accounts. And then it was like, oh, I really like Tobin Tonight. Like, okay, don't bully me by being positive, like, because that's what I thought it was like, oh, look at, you're so good. And it was like someone from, I think it was like Boston, Mass, and I was like, how are you hearing me from Boston? And they're like, oh, I just really like these interviews. And I'm like, okay, but they're not even US acts. They're like people in Canada that aren't overly famous at this point. And he was like, oh, I just like the interview style. I was like, okay, stop it. Stop ribbing me. Like, where's the punchline? Where's the joke? And then eventually it was just like, yeah, no, it's fine. He just liked the interview. So it's like, it's still cool because you think about like, I believe, so I'm 91. You don't have to give your age. You're around to say 20 odd. Say that, I guess. Yeah. So like, you know, growing up, like growing up on say like MSN or like ICQ or any of these, like you would never imagine your life like someone contacting you from the US because they need your email, they need something. But now today with Facebook, it's like just typing away and be like, oh, that person looks familiar. I guess I'll send them a message.
Yeah. No, it is really cool. And kind of like you were saying with, I don't know if it's like they like my accent or whatever it is, but like I do find though, when I go even to the US and perform or when I've gone to Europe and whatnot, I think like part of it is just the fact that you are a Canadian. I don't know. I get that anyway, just because like you're all of a sudden from a different country. So that's cool. Yeah. And then like Canada has a really good like rep with most countries, I would say too. So automatically they're like, oh, you're friendly. And, like, so that's helpful. And then, so I definitely have like when I've performed, especially like when I go to like California or whatever, and I'm always surprised at just like how much love I get in these countries and cities, because I'm not expecting it, but then it's just like they think I'm like so cool because I'm like coming from Canada, so it's different, and it's like, so that's kind of a neat thing too.
Yeah, like because I just thought it was like, to me it's always interesting when you go other places and you like, of course, if you're in Canada or like your hometown, of course you get the fan base, but I just thought it was interesting, like, going to the States, like you mentioned, that people like kind of not, number one, liking the music or engaging with you, but like, how have you found that in the States? Like, I guess it's mostly, like you said, positive, but like, have you gone to like, say, other countries to perform outside of, say, the States, and like, how have they perceived it, if so?
So I've performed like in Europe as well, in Holland, in France, there's a couple other countries there too, but so usually, it was kind of set up where it was like a mini tour in a sense, where I would kind of go to a festival and then I would be performing as part of a festival, and that's usually the way I start, just so like there's other people there that like are musicians, and then there's like a reason for people to like come and see me because it's a showcase and that type of thing. But then like it kind of opens up the doors for when I go back on my own, because then there's people there that I know, or I've like developed a little bit more of a fan base. And that happens to me too, where it's like someone saw me 2 years prior, and then they bring like 10 friends to the show, and then they bring 10 more friends, and they bring 10 more friends, and it just kind of like builds from there. So that's been really cool too, is that when I've performed in these like different cities and countries, like the fans really stay loyal and they really are excited for me to come back, and then they bring their friends, and so it just kind of like builds from there. California is definitely, especially when I go to Los Angeles, and that's been one of those places for me that like people just keep coming back, and it's like feels really good.
But tell me a little bit about now, of course, because you have a song out now, like Roses, that was premiered around, I think it was like Valentine's Day, if not that day. Good marketing. But tell me a little bit about that song. Tell me like a little bit of the history of it, and really where you want to see this go, because I know, of course, other songs have been played, say, on radio, again, on the internet radio as well, but like, where do you want Roses to go, and a little bit of the background behind that?
So Roses, I'm really, really excited about. I would probably say this is my favorite song to date that I've released, and maybe that might also be just because like my latest song, as
I was just gonna be like, it's like my third favorite song. I
guess sometimes as artists, right, we're like, oh well, this next one is my best. This next one is trying to get better and better. So it may be that. It just might be an artist syndrome, but I honestly feel that this is like my best song. I'm proud of this song, and but part of the reason why I love this song so much is like I feel like it really it puts all the things together that I want to give to my audience, and that's like with the music, there's a lot of like 90s R&B influence in it, and it's very R&B compared to a lot of stuff that I was doing before that was a little more on like the pop side versus R&B, and so it's kind of helping me to move into that direction now. And yeah, so when I first, so a producer based in London, his name is Chet Williams. He sent me the beat probably a year ago now. And I'd never worked with him before, anything, but like online, you just kind of like meet people and everything. And so he was, reached out to me, and then I heard some of his stuff and I really, really liked it. So he sent me this beat, and I loved it. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh my God, this is like a jam for sure. And so I knew that I wanted to make it like perfect. I knew that it was going to be like a love song and all this. And I started coming up with melodies pretty much right away when I got the track. But for some reason, just like I was really stuck on the lyrics. I just wasn't satisfied with whatever I was writing at the time. And so sometimes, it happens where I can write a song like in an hour, or sometimes I just like need to take a break from it and like sit on it, or just like not even listen to it and then come back to it, whatever, a week, month, so forth later. So that's what happened is I would leave it alone for like a couple weeks, and then I come back to it, try, still nothing, leave it alone, come back to it. Anyway, so finally in the fall, I was like, okay, it's been a little while since I've like sat down, tried this song. So I did, and then it just like started to flow. It was like super late at night, and I just was like, it was kind of funny. I was like in my room, like it was all dark. Like I don't even think I had any lights on. I'm just like writing this song, and yeah, it just started to kind of flow. And so yeah, it also was influenced a lot by some of the stuff that I was listening to as well, like artists like her and Ella May and that type of thing. And I know their lyrics, like they're just kind of like super honest about. It feels like they're talking directly to you, or like you know exactly what they're talking about when they're singing. So that's kind of what I was going for. I was like, let me just stop like thinking so much about like making it perfect, and let me just like write. And so that's kind of what happened. And then this song was born, and it kind of worked out where it was like done in time for Valentine's Day. I was like, well, this would be perfect, roses and all that. And yeah, so now I did a lyric video, but I do really want to do like a music video for it. It's just been difficult with like, COVID right now, but I do want to do a music video. And the song has been really helping to get a lot more attention, not only from fans, but just from music industry people. And so I'm really excited about that, because now I have like an EP coming up. So this is kind of like the start of that, which I'm excited about. So
I'll be in the music video. No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll be the rose. I will pretend I'll dress up in a rose. No. I like that though. That's a really good answer. The thing that I was going to mention too, of course, which is interesting with acts that we do have on, like, now I might use a little bit more of the countryside, just because it seems like that's technically where I kind of go sometimes with these examples. But like, I look at, say, I think the girl's name is Jess Muskoka. I could have butchered that, but it's like, there are songs I have on my or I was about to say iPad. Wow, on my iPhone, that it's like, I'll listen to it and be like, okay, I stumbled across it on iTunes, but there's like no album to it. It's just a single. And I'm like, okay. And then like, you'll stumble across another one. You're like, okay, good. She's continuing to make music. That's fine. Great. And then next minute you'll see like, now her first album is coming out or something. And you'll be like, oh, these are like 2 or 3 songs that I already knew about. So it kind of feels like, geez, I knew about it before everyone else did, because now everyone else is going to see the EP and be like, now I'm invested, because now there's like 20 songs, or like at least 10, where it's like, yeah, but did you hear these beforehand? Because these songs have been out for like 2 years. So like, no. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to judge you, but it's just, I feel like, oh, like I knew about it before you did. Oh, so cool. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting to me, because I'm sure there are people out there now that listen to Roses and will be like, oh, this is interesting, download it, whatever. And then you'll come out with your EP, and then there'll be others like, have you heard this song Roses? And it's like, actually, yeah, I have. Where have you been? Yeah. And it's like, I feel like I'm a more dedicated fan than you. It's like, I was the hipster. Yeah. But no, that's how I look at it. I think that's good. Like, congratulations on that. And especially if like more people are going to expand, give you more attention there. I want to talk a little bit on the fun side of things here as well. Is like I have seen on Instagram that you like to kind of party it up with the summertime vibes. I see a lot of like these summer things of it's like you in a bikini going around here, like you know, playing games. Like I don't know, it's like the toss across games. There's and I'm just like I think there was one that you were see, I'm not like a big workout person. Like our mutual friend Laddie knows all about this stuff, but there's one that's like the thing that you kind of have to move your feet across. And I'm like, look at her just running through these things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just still like, I do not want to get in a contest with Jenna anytime soon where it's like, you have to do this in like 1 minute or you're weak. I'd be like, I guess I'm weak. I'm weak.
No. So yeah, I mean, I definitely love the summertime. It's like my favorite season. So yeah, I'm very much outside doing things, being active, being on the beach. Yeah, is probably like my other favorite thing besides music. So yes, but yeah, I also am very passionate about fitness. And so I work out almost every day. And yeah, I mean, I played sports and whatnot like all my life too, but I'm actually a fitness trainer too. So that's
wow. Okay. So see, it goes hand in hand. That's good because otherwise I'd be like, she's just doing this for fun. I'm scared because people who just like work out for fun is almost like you're motivated.
Fun, yeah, yeah, it is my job too.
Yeah. It's like you're motivated, but that motivation scares me. Like I want to work out too, but it's like I feel like that's work. I don't feel like that's play.
Yeah.
But explain to me a little bit, I guess, on the side of like the sports background, like some of the sports that you grew up playing. Like, so I'm assuming from Canadian standpoint, you had to pick up a hockey stick or a puck at some point, or was it just more or less like basketball?
Actually, well, I can say I picked up a stick.
Yeah. I picked up a stick and then I dropped it instantly.
So actually, I was more like I danced all my life, but I played soccer actually from like when I was super little all the way until I went to college, and then volleyball was another sport that I really loved, especially on the beach. I never got like too serious about it, but it's still something that I always love to do. But yeah, I never got into like the real Canadian sports like lacrosse and hockey and stuff. I don't like the cold. I know I live here in Canada, but yeah. So, but I do watch, like I grew up watching hockey. So there's my Canadian. I grew up watching hockey. I also am a Raptors fan.
There you go. Tied all in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that though, like, cause I come from the background of, you know, I mentioned hockey, but so I don't think I've ever played hockey till I was like maybe 13 or 14. And it's like, you know, it's just, I laugh at it because from the Canadian standpoint, it's almost like you either grew up with a stick in your hand or you were forced to put a stick in your hand. And it's like, that's like the moment where it's like, all right, you're either going to play this or you're going to watch it. You pick and choose what you're going to do. I'm like, I think I'll watch it. Like, I'll watch it. I'll watch it. I won't play it. I'll root for you, but it's not for me.
Something about like, I mean, I know in women's hockey you don't really check and stuff, but I don't know. It's just something about, I don't know. And then I can skate, but not like super well. Like if there's a bump on the ice or like someone gives me a little shove, like I'm going down. But
that's fair. I mean, like, listen, that's one of the reasons that I like hockey, just because it's like you can stick handle. It's like I'll play ball hockey because it's no disadvantage. We're all on our feet. But then when you go to put on skates, I'm like, can you skate? They're like, absolutely. I'd be like, okay, now it went from 10-10 even to you've now are 20 and I'm at 2. That's not fair. It's like, but I feel like you can say that mostly with any sport. It's like if you go out and play volleyball and it's like, can you volley? Absolutely. It's like, can you? No, I can't.
It always discourages me when I like go, you know, skating, whatever, to a rink like maybe once a year, and then like I'm getting on, I'm like you know, getting my feet back on the ice, and then there's this like 3-year-old child like doing loops.
Yeah. You watch like like tonight, like whenever this is posted, pretty much. But like you know, there's going to be a hockey game on say tonight, and there's going to be like when they show hometown hockey or you know like Hockey Night in Canada, and like look at this thing that a 3-year-old could do. I'd be like, Do you know what I was doing at 3? I was trying to figure out how to get 7-Up in a bottle, and like, you know, no one noticing that I'm trying to get 7-Up in a bottle. This kid's out here dribbling, like tap dancing with a stick in his hand. And I'm just like, what are you doing? What school are you going to for this? I'm gonna just be surprised, like like a little bit off topic, but I would be surprised if in years when they go to do like NHL drafts, NBA drafts, and they'll interview the kid, we'll probably be like, you know, 30, 35. And then it's like, where did you learn all these skills? There was this one brief time, this 2-period time frame where we didn't have no school. All I did was stay home and practice. I'd be like, oh geez, look what he did. 2 years practicing. Like
that's so true.
That's scary.
Yeah.
To kind of close it out, Jenna, I want to talk a little bit about play a little bit of a game, I guess, called, you know, How Canadian, or if it's trendy on TikTok, because I hate these trends, but it's, to me, let's do it this way. I hate the name trend where it's like, tell me your boyfriend wouldn't cheat on you without telling me he's not going to cheat on you. Easy. Yeah. He's not going to cheat. Stop making it harder than it is. But I guess it's, in a way, if we were going to do it that way, is tell me you're Canadian without actually telling me you're Canadian.
Okay. I prefer real maple syrup over table syrup.
That's a good one. I like that. I was just gonna say, my neighbor backed into my car and I offered him a Tim Hortons. Like, that's
good. That's a good one.
Yeah. It's like, sorry, I bumped into your car. No problem, eh? Here's a tease. Can you explain to me, I guess, like something that's very Canadian that you think only happens, just say in Canada, that like when because if you've traveled, so of course, like you go to their places and you're like, geez, I didn't know that was Canadian until you've traveled elsewhere. Like, so my example, like, and a lot of people have used this one as well, is I call it the door theory, where it's like you open a door for someone and then they start running and you apologize. You're like, I'm sorry. I thought I was doing something nice for you. Yeah. But like, it's okay. You didn't have to apologize because they ran. But like, I feel like in the States, it's like, if you're not right behind them, it's like that door's closing. It don't matter if they're like a good distance away. But what's an example to you, I guess, that would be like a kind of a how Canadian?
Well, I have a few, like, because definitely because I lived in Boston for 4 years when I was in school, so that was pointed out to me a lot, that I say sorry way too much, and it was I say sorry, not sorry. So that was a whole other. There's certain ways, certain things, like words that we say, sorry, tomorrow, you know, things like that, that are a little bit different. I mean, as a kid, well, because sometimes I guess maybe you talk about like shows that you watch growing up as a kid, and like, I don't know, do you have like TVO Kids?
No, what was
no? Maybe it was in like Ontario then, but like, did you have like the show? I don't know, like Pengu or like
So we would probably see it on like CBC Kids down here.
Yeah, or like Art Attack.
Yeah.
So those are very Canadian.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Jenna Nation for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying thank you for listening and good night.